Okay, ladies and gentlemen, hello again. This is Paul Sims. I'm chairman at eyeforpharma, calling you today from London, and welcome to today's webinar, which is titled Medical Affairs Leadership, How to Become an Architect of Value. So it's an ambitious one, but it's a great one, and I'm really delighted you could join us today. So why did we decide on this topic in particular? Well, the motivation is, to be honest, quite personal, I guess, in this case. I've felt that for many years that medical departments within almost all pharma companies are really quite underutilized and underappreciated, and it seems to me that every industry in the world is striving for authenticity, trust, and of course our ability to analyze a huge amount of data these days, and none more so, of course, than pharma. So it's always perplexed me that we're not using our medically trained communicators and our evidence generators, as I tend to call them, nearly as much as we should. However, things are starting to change. We still have some way to go, but we can see already that this is becoming a popular topic. We have actually got about 1,400 people signed up to this webinar today, which is actually nearly as many as sign up to our more commercially focused webinars. So I think not scientific, but a good indicator perhaps of a groundswell of interest in this area. Of course, I can be confident about this because I am furnished with some fellow believers, and you can see their smiling faces on the screen in front of you. To be honest with you, if you could wish for a good group of believers, then you couldn't really do much better than our panelists today, all of whom I'm obviously incredibly thankful for giving up their time over the next hour, and I'm confident we're going to hear some very interesting things from them. Top left, you can see we have Amit Nathwani, who recently became Group CMO at Sanofi. I was fortunate enough to interview Amit last year, where I felt that he was very eloquent, and he probably doesn't realize it, but what he said there was a large amount of my drive behind pulling together this webinar. He spoke very passionately, very eloquently about the new era of medical affairs and how we need to work going forward. Amit, as I say, joined Sanofi quite recently, but spent 12 years at Novartis and 9 at GSK before that in clinical development and medical affairs roles, so we'll be giving a wealth of experience today. Top right, we have Kate. Kate, thank you so much for joining us. You are the Chief Medical Officer for Pharmaceuticals at GSK. Kate's really responsible for global clinical safety, pharmacovigilance, value evidence and outcomes, and medical affairs for a large number of the franchises at GSK, and in particular, Kate has led GSK's effort to transform how we partner with patients in drug development and embed a culture of patient centricity. I'm sure that's a topic that will be featured during today's conversation within the R&D organization. So fantastic to have Kate here. And Nico was very kind enough to invite me to Roche last year, and he's clearly returning the favor here. Thank you, Nico. He is head of medical affairs within the Global Product Development Organization, been there since 2014, and has a lot of experience in oncology and hematology therapy areas, particularly in medical affairs since 2013. Was actually medical director for oncology at Roche Germany, and prior to that. So obviously a very key therapy area for all of us these days. So that's plenty from me. I think that it's time to get going. What I'd really like to ask everyone who's listening here today, because we are going to be really having a discussion, we don't have any sort of formal slides or presentations to show you. What I'd really like to do is to make this session a conversation. And what I mean by that is you will see the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screens if you're looking at a screen, and you can say a little hello to us there now just so that I know you're awake, but I want to see you guys using that a lot more over the course of the next few minutes. Let's make sure that we have all of your questions answered. The only way to do that, of course, is to let us know what they are. So do not be shy in writing in and letting us know what you want to know. The first item on the agenda is actually a piece of work for you as well. I'm going to bring up on your screen now a question. If you just have a look now, you can see it appear. Let's have a go. Right. What is the biggest capability your medical department needs to generate in the next couple of years? It sounds like a simple question, but I'm going to force you to choose only one of these. You probably want to choose all 5. The ability to combine real-world evidence, clinical and other data to prove value, the ability to create a continuous evidence generation machine, and my emphasis there is on the word continuous, the ability to communicate authoritatively across the company, so to take the evidence that has been found and to actually use it across the company, to have an influence externally, so this would obviously be the traditional MSL role, KOLs, customers, stakeholders, etc. Or finally, the ability to harness patient-reported outcomes and next generation digital sensors and devices, obviously a huge amount of potential coming from those over the next few years, decades. So I can see about a third of you have voted so far, so I'm going to hold that open for about 5 more seconds and chivvy you all to get your answers in. We're up to about halfway now. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right. Okay, so we got nearly all of you there. Thank you very much for voting. Let's have a look at the results. Okay, there is nearly half of you choosing my first option. Hopefully that's because you didn't just get bored and chose that out of it being the first one. Ability to combine RWE, clinical, and other data is clearly what nearly half of you think is key, but significant minorities, particularly 25% of you plumping for the original MSL role, and really nothing getting below this 8%, which I thought actually would be the lowest, but I thought it would be sort of 2 or 3%. So that's actually very interesting that some of you think that that is the key thing there. If you would be so kind, by the way, is to let us know why you chose the answer that you chose there, then do write in on the right-hand side, and I will read out some of those responses as we go forward. So give us a bit of context behind your vote. I'm going to just go to Amit, though, as he's the first on the list. I don't know if Amit, these results surprise you, and do you think you would agree with them? Of course, during our interview, we spoke a lot about the continuous evidence generation, so I don't know if that's what you would have gone for.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Paul. I think I'll take the privilege of being a panelist to actually have chosen the second one, continuous, and the last one. And
okay, all right, I see. Breaking the rules.
So I'll break the rules. I take it as, and the reason for that is, I'll be very clear, is that I think that today, integrating data from clinical trials, real-world evidence, and outcomes to show values, where I think where the game is at today, anyway. What I think, and we are struggling in Sanofi, and I'm sure that when I struggled with this in Novartis as well, was the ability to not just continuously get data which was customized to each healthcare system, but to now incorporate many new ways to redefine PROs, to redefine outcomes, to get the patient perspective in, to use the technologies that are being used anyway by patients in their normal lives and by everyone in their normal lives into this. So for me, the second and the fourth one is where I believe industry needs to develop the capabilities, and as a consequence, I would have chosen those two.
Yeah, this is Kate. So this is a tough question, Paul. So thank you for asking it. I don't know if who actually posed it, but obviously all of these things are extremely important, and each company is going to have a different emphasis. So for GSK, obviously, we're moving into a new era where we do not pay external speakers to speak on our behalf for our prescription medicines. And so the importance of the medical department in actually influencing externally is really a high priority for us. And because we're working in a different model than we did before, and certainly a different model than I think any other company is working now, how we do that and how we formulate that new model is going to be extremely important. And how we really have influential, expert, and confident external presence is going to be key for us moving forward. Now, the other one that I checked, so I didn't just check one either, is the continuous evidence generation machine as well. And I guess in my mind, it was a lot of the things that Amit talked about, but also being able to be nimble and bring insights in earlier into development so that we are launch ready after registration, so that we take those insights and understand patients, healthcare systems, and providers' needs very early on, so that we ask the right questions in our development program. But that's not to discount the other ones as well. They're all going to be, I think, important in how we develop medicines of value for patients.
Yeah, this is Nico. Welcome to everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. Wholeheartedly agree with what the colleagues said. I think that the first 2 points are actually intertwined in a way. I think the big task for all of us in medical affairs is really to overcome the obsolete phased development paradigm, as scientific progress has so accelerated that we will no longer continue to see the classical phase 1, 2, 3, 4 model, but we're already in the middle of a quite advanced, much more dynamic model where I think medical affairs really is exactly that part in the organization that has to give it sense towards what the final value proposition for those is that will receive or prescribe or deal with a medicine in whatever system that is. And I think that is really where I see the clear focus, and that involves actually many of the points listed here.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to...
Paul?
Yes, sorry, I was just going to read out the... Go for it, Amit.
I just wanted to come back to, so I was surprised and slightly sort of disappointed with the 8% on the lower one. So I just want to give a bit of context to this. So everyone talks about it right now, is there's this fourth industrial revolution, the use of AI, use of digital technologies, and how it's going to transform healthcare. And I think that if you look at the speed of change in healthcare practice, in healthcare systems, in the adoption of digital technologies to inform data, inform decisions, I think that one of the areas that I'm very concerned about is in medical, our role to be agile, I think as Kate said, to adopt very rapidly to these changes, to be able to generate data in new context, to leverage technology, is something that if we don't start to deal with now, you talked about the next 2 years, is a capability we have to develop. And on top of this, there's a big move towards standardizing outcomes to make it transparent so we actually see for key diseases that we can actually generate not just the normal clinical data that we're traditionally used to developing, but much more sophisticated, in-depth, outcome-based data in a standardized way for many diseases. And this is, again, a huge movement across industry, and there's now ICHOM sort of criteria being established across the world that are being accepted by regulators. So I think, for me, the last one was surprising, but that's where I'll put my focus for the next few years as well.
But Amit, do you really feel as if pharma companies, your company, is truly investing in these kind of electronic devices, these sensors? I mean, go to the Consumer Electronics Show, there's probably not more than a handful of people from our industry in that room. And, in fact, go to any health technology event and the pharma presence is minimal, if existent at all.
And this is so the answer is, are pharma companies and medtech companies going to invest? I think they are. We are beginning to. We're also going to sponsor an equivalent of the CES in Paris coming up very shortly from Sanofi. We should be present at these things because so my firm belief is that we should be far more involved than we are. And many tech companies, I mean, so I was fortunate enough to have been in Davos for the last week, and the number of tech companies who were speaking to healthcare companies was huge. So, if we don't do it, Amazon's into it. We know Verily's into it. We know that all of the tech companies are moving in the same direction. So I think it is up to us to actually become involved.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, obviously this is Kate, but this is a very hot area. It's a necessary area to understand how we can acquire data or understanding of how patients actually respond to our medicines, what's actually important to them, and the digital sensor and devices area is going to be pivotal to doing that well. And so, again, I don't disagree that this is extremely important. But it's hard to separate that from what do we think of continuous evidence generation. So how do how do we understand what is the most important thing for patients and whether or not our medicines actually have an impact on that. And this is going to be a huge piece of that. The complexity, of course, is that there are so many tech companies out there. How do you pick the right technology that's not going to become obsolete in 6 months? And I'd be really interested to hear from others about how they're approaching that question.
I imagine one way is to have a big company like GSK sponsor it.
Well, just to, this is Nico. I think from what you guys said, for me there's the question of, are we just trying to follow something that we feel we really need to jump on real quick because it's there, or are we actually actively shaping and driving it? For me, I often encounter that there's a lot of buzz around it, and when you really drill it down to whether we have started to really understand what the questions are that we want to answer here and what we're actually targeting with regards to finally delivering for those that are supposed to receive value from it, it's often fairly blurry still. So I really think that that is an area where we really need to up our game on really understanding what is it that we actually really want to get out of this, starting with the right questions, in particular in the patient area. There's a lot of stuff out there, but if I look at it and I really ask myself, okay, what is that adding towards patient benefit? What do patients really have from that? Often the answer is not straightforward. And the other part is that we've really been thinking big about how big data would accelerate many, many things. And now I think we are in a little bit of a sobering period where we see, hey, the validity of these data has reached a volatility degree that sometimes really is concerning. And that is one area where I really think we need to get our act together also to provide standards, as initially said, and also quality measures in ensuring that we ask the right questions, but that also the data that we're getting out of all of this amazing technology finally really makes sense for advancing our molecules into meaningful medicines.
Guys, you don't mind, I'm just going to bring some of the audience questions in. Our audience has been terrifically active already, so thank you so much to everybody who's been writing in, although still a few people who haven't done so yet. I'm just going to read out a few if that's all right. Ankit Gupta says, the pharma industry needs to be looked upon as an evidence generation industry and to be believed as the ones they do as they preach. Donald Marazzo says, biosensors can provide real-time impact of treatments to modify and optimize dosage. It provides a method to improve the impact of medications by precision. We've got Robert Tenson, medical, which I see as knowing about patients and thinking about what helps them. So the added value of a product for the end user is what is it all about? Of course, as a company, one should translate this value into a healthy business. Gosh, there are quite a few good ones here. Michael Reiki says this will require a highly scientific-based and trained medical affairs unit. This is in response to Kate's, what Kate said is the model that we need to pursue. And actually asks in your model, how will you leverage peer-to-peer interaction if you do not use external experts? A complex set of competencies is required to perform effectively in the medical affairs function. Please advise on the educational and training initiatives your companies need to be involved in going forward. That's from Honorio Silva. Susan Jenny, involving patients in the clinical trial process from the beginning engages the patient in trial design in a language they understand. This absolutely is essential to bring drugs to market more quickly. So I don't think there's anything there that any of us are going to disagree with, but of our panelists, is there anything from what the audience has just contributed that piques your interest or you want to respond to?
That's an entire agenda. Go ahead, Kate.
It is. There's a lot there. I just wanted to respond to the peer-to-peer comment, and that's exactly, you know, spot on. And that's where we have to go, is really to have those peer-to-peer relationships. And you know, we're currently looking into the best way of doing that right now. And so it's one of the pillars that we're going to have to concentrate on, and it will have to guide what we do in our training programs to make sure that people are prepared for those conversations, for those peer-to-peer conversations.
And this is a lead, just to add to what Kate said. I think that the traditional role of the medical organization, or the perception of the medical organization, as being a place where it's the only place that dialogue takes place with external experts, and so as a provision of a service, that's got to move into much more discussing and debating and creating evidence. But also, I think we have to move away as an industry from some of the activities of shipping vast numbers of physicians to congresses and things like that, and actually move away from and get the data, the right data from the congresses to the people who need it in a timely manner. And if you look at the world again, and come back to the digital space again, the number of physicians who have access everything online, they like their data in short, sharp summaries. We should be able to actually sort of move away from the old traditional model, which is reasonably cumbersome. And I think many people are moving that way anyway.
Ami, can I just stay with you for one more second? There's a comment here
Sure.
that I feel that is probably appropriate for you. It's a very simple question from Susan Brousseau. How do you really turn PRO data via sensors and devices into improved value according to the payer? I guess the underlying sort of question behind that, of course, is do you feel that payers are listening? Do you feel that you have the confidence that this data is absolutely the way forward and that it's going to be treated seriously?
Yeah. So this is a very complex question. The key thing is, what is valuable to the patient? What is the true outcome? And actually, again, in the workshops that I've been involved in on these recently, even including last week, there were payers around there who are experimenting today with technology themselves to better define in real time meaningful outcomes, to measure the impact of their interventions, to see whether or not actually the level of care is improving in a more cost-effective way. So they're doing it anyway. So if you work with the payers today, I think there's very little resistance. As long as you generate the data with them and the experts together to actually say what is it that we're all trying to show or demonstrate, and you measure it in a transparent way, you collect the data, it's actually you can document as if it's a new outcome that you're first describing because the sensors allow you a different level of sensitivity, then you put the robustness around it with the science. But doing it with the payers and the experts and the patients involved, I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'd like to reiterate that relationship with the payers and actually working with them. I think that we, as an industry, should be doing that more. And I do believe and agree that the payers are open to these new ways of measuring patient benefit as well as economic benefit for them, as long as they have some input into how it's going to have a positive impact on their system as well. So this is something that, again, as an industry, I think we can do better and will help us design and implement these new digital and sensor solutions.
Yeah, I just want to briefly second what Amit said on really abandoning traditional ways of communicating evidence and data. I really think this is a super critical point where I observe that often we're simply held by being so entrenched in the old-fashioned models and activities that this is really where medical affairs needs to be, to a certain degree, potentially a disruptor and really shaping this differently and using what is out there with regard to digital communication technologies in really changing how we're distributing, communicating in a credible way, and really reaching those that require that information. I think that's an enormous area for growth and improvement, and that is what I'm personally very excited about, to see that this is quite radically changing in some areas, but is a little slow in others. So really pushing the boundaries there, I think, is very critical.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that that was a good question. I think we should ask another, don't you? It's going to be another tricky one. I'm afraid there aren't really any easy questions here, Kate. This is, again, tricky possibly because I'm forcing you to choose one. And you can actually blame Nico for this question, as it was his suggestion. Whom do you consider your key customer at country medical affairs level? Your key customer. Very hard for you, I know. This is going to be to choose just one. but I'm going to have to force you. Once again, if you can add some context behind your answer, if you feel that you could justify it or explain it, then do write in on the right-hand side, and I will involve you in the conversation. So, as you can see, HTAs, payers, thought leaders and KOLs, prescribers and other HCPs, patients, or others. So I'm going to hold that open 5 more seconds. I've only got about 40% of votes in, so come on everyone. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's have a look. Right, we've got about 2/3 of you voting there. So a few people need to wake up. Come on, everyone. HTAs and payers, 13%. Thought leaders and KOLs, I guess that's the traditional focus of the medical affairs unit at 2/5 of the replies there. Patients and other HCPs, 23. Patients, 22. I don't know if the panelists will agree that that's an appropriate figure, and only 1% thinks that anybody else is important. So, interesting. I guess a more traditional response from our community here, wouldn't we say? Let's start with you, Kate, this time.
Yeah, so this is not surprising to me because this is, I think, where we are today. It is the traditional focus, and I think in the future it's going to change. I mean, based on our previous discussion already, we're talking about how we can partner more with the payers and the HTAs to understand, you know, what their requirements are going to be, especially in a very volatile external environment that seems to be changing minute by minute. And then, of course, the patient needs to be our ultimate customer. We need to understand the patient's needs and meet those with any new medicine that we bring to the market. And how are we going to understand that? Again, we've been talking about that quite a bit already today. But at the end of the day, you know, we have to see what is the value for our patients, and then what is the value for the healthcare systems within which they reside. And of course, there's a great variety of needs in healthcare systems, and that's one of the things that's going to just add to the complexity of what we do, because the bar is always going to be raised about what's expected from us.
Okay, going back to the HTAs and payers, is it really your responsibility within medical to be doing that? Is that not market access? Do we not have others, HEOR, others that should be closer to the payer? Because of course, it's not for everybody to have a relationship with the payer, is it?
Well, it's a really interesting question, because I think every company has a different model. So in my group, I have HEOR. We call it value, evidence, and outcomes. In medical, but the reach of our health outcomes group is actually from early in development well into post-launch. So yes, I do think, at least in our case, it is a medical responsibility. And in country, the medical teams in the countries, the payers in those countries, are the remit of, at least from the scientific side, the medical side, we need to support them in having them understand our data. Now, from the market access perspective, we work very closely with our market access colleagues. And so that partnership is really important for us to be effective with the payers and HTA. So it's not just one person who's responsible for that relationship.
Yeah.
Well, Andy Wise, sorry, everyone wants to jump in. Let me just quickly read out one quick thing. Andy Wise, I'm quite shocked that 78% of people consider patients to be at best secondary. They may not be the payer or client, but they absolutely are our key customer. So I'm just throwing that one in there before you guys reply to probably just derail you slightly. But I think I have to choose one of you. Nico, do you want to go first?
Well, thank you. So I think if you really look into what's behind that question, I would put it on a different level here, and I would say, okay, only very few years ago, probably we would have had a rating of 90% on the thought leaders, KOLs, or prescribers. So I think this should at least give us a little bit of credit as evolving medical affairs organizations, that we finally embrace the fact that this is really a multi-stakeholder landscape out there, where a holistic approach towards really discussing partnering and driving the confidence on our evidence is absolutely critical. However, I really like the quote that by the end of the day, this is really about patients. And I think we're all fully aligned around that. But I would really ask ourselves, to be very honest, how many of our organizations had a dedicated approach to really build in the patient voice in an active manner into planning on priorities and projects. And I think the number would be shockingly low. I think this is a great progress already, much more to do, obviously, but I think overall it is good that we have this wake-up call here.
Yeah.
Okay, Amit?
This is yeah, sure. So just to kind of a few things. First, I'll pick up on what Kate said on the payers. I think there's a big difference between a medical group being responsible for a contractual transaction with a payer versus partnering with a payer or seeing them as a stakeholder from you're trying to get evidence to meet their requirements, to actually make them shape their understanding of the disease and to understand the insights on which to generate the outcome. So that's just to say, so I think HTA and payers is absolutely part of the role of the medical organization. It's actually one of the areas we need to develop and make sure everyone appreciates their context and perspective. And my response to the patients is that absolutely, I mean, I'm delighted that it's 22%. I expected it to be much lower. I would have probably put that personally, if I had to choose, I would have made that my choice specifically, because I think in the end, it's an ecosystem towards, with multi-stakeholders towards improving the outcomes for patients. So if patients is the center, then everything else falls out of it along the pathway. And so long as we're doing that for the benefit of the patients, we should not, that will become my principal stakeholder, and the principle that everything else has to, therefore, along the chain, and towards the benefit in the end of a reasonable outcome for a patient. I'll stop there.
Well, there's a lot of people writing in with contrasting views on this topic. Of course, some people agreeing that patients are undervalued, but a lot of people also saying that agreeing with what Amit and Nico just said, in that this has been a shift actually that we should be proud of, given what it might have been not that longer ago. Janet Barrett says, patient focus is definitely key. However, a medicine is only beneficial if appropriately administered to those patients who will receive benefit with maximum tolerability. Appropriate medical intervention will improve patient outcomes. At the end of the day, I agree with George Merck. Good medicine is good business. Very good, Jean. Yeah, we've got all sorts of contrasting replies. So if you want to make a case for the patient or make a case for the payer, those are the two that we've talked about most in the last 5 minutes. Do please write in and share your thoughts. In the meantime, I thought it might be a nice idea actually if I further expand on the patient issue and go to another poll question. Let's just do one more. Have a look at your screens now, and what do medical departments need to improve to really embrace patient centricity meaningfully? So we're going to make the assumption here that you do wish to do this, but what do we actually need to do in order to make it happen more easily? Work with clinical to incorporate patient voice into trial design. Direct engagement with patient groups. So medical affairs people need to speak with patient groups and patients more directly. More medics spending time in clinical practice so you can appreciate the physician's view of the patient and obviously not overrule the patient-physician relationship, which we all believe to be fairly sacrosanct still. Strongly apply patient insights in direct medical interactions, so in MSLs interactions, to focus on how this needs to be incorporated within the conversation. Or finally, industry-wide consensus on what good patient engagement looks like. So this answer, I guess, is if you feel that we need a better definition of it, a better understanding of what our real objective is before we can actually improve our patient-centric activity. So 5, again, quite tricky responses perhaps for you to choose from, and again, forcing you to choose only one. Half of you have voted. I'll just hold it open for 3 more seconds. So be quick. 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's have a look at the replies. Here we have pretty varied results. Only 5% choosing that medical spending time in clinical practice is going to be the answer, but a lot of people advocating, a third of people, the direct engagement with patient groups, and still another strong application of just applying those patient insights, perhaps from others, in those direct medical interactions. So I think we see a real hands-on response to this question, I think is what I would probably take from it. Significant minorities, again, on the first and last options there as well. So I can't remember who wrote this question. It might even have been me. But I'd be very interested in our panelists' reaction to that. Shall I come to you first this time, Nico?
Yeah, thank you. I have a bright smile on my face right now because I actually think this is more of a staggered approach. So if you don't do what has been rated with 34%, how do you want to build this into your clinical trials, and how do you want to apply these insights into your medical interactions? So I think absolutely key is really to understand what is in the mind of the patients, what is really influencing their daily lives, their decisions, what do they need, what is their demand from being heard. I think that's absolutely critical, and I think that that really needs to happen in an active way, not just us thinking because we've been around in the business for so long or have been having clinical experience in the past knowing what patients need. That's utterly wrong. We really need to listen to them now, and we need to listen very carefully and actively.
Okay. I've just remembered it was actually GSK and Kate that suggested this question. So Kate, let me come to you next.
Thank you. So I agree with Nico that you can't do one without the other in this case. And I don't think any company or people represented around this call would say that their companies are not patient-centric. I think we all are, but it's really the challenge of how do you bring that insight in to the decision making, to the clinical development, so that we're asking the right questions at the right time in development. And so I agree that direct engagement with patient groups, and not just patient groups, but with patients who may not necessarily put themselves forward. So not the professional patient only, but those patients who may not be as well represented. I think we really have to understand the spectrum of patients in each disease area. And then we do need to learn how to incorporate those insights into our clinical trials. And at least in our organization, we're very science-focused. We're also milestone-focused. So if we have to do another step and it might slow us down, then we think, oh, well, we'll do it later, when sometimes it's too late. You really have to have those insights early on. And then, of course, to be credible, I think you do have to incorporate that patient focus into every interaction that you have, both internally and externally. So it's hard for me to pick just one or two or even three of these. And we do now have a dedicated group here at GSK to change the culture of how we incorporate patient insights into the fabric of what we do. And it's already making a difference. So I guess I can report back in a bit about how or what progress we've made.
Thank you, Kate. I just have to let you know before going on that there's a lot of comments from our audience on you know, the how, and people really wanting to know, you know, what should actually medical be doing here. And in fact, Karen Anderson asks, can the panel please comment on the level of direct patient interaction the medical teams have at their organizations currently and planned in the future? So I think for Amit and Nico, if you're going to reply, please do try and elaborate on that if you can.
Okay, so this is Amit. Let me just first of all, I think that I agree with my panelists completely. I want to pick up to 2 points, which then come to the question that you asked, which is specifically, you know, if you look at do we need an industry-wide consensus? Because nobody's really talked about that. I think we do, and the reason for this is we're constantly badgered by privacy laws. You know, what is the role of pharma industry talking to patients? At the same time, we're all trying to develop what is the best way to understand the patient journey and the patient outcome in a given healthcare system in order to ensure that whatever we develop is for their benefit. So it's very hard to do that unless you directly engage. And at the same time, we have to be very cautious because there's a huge suspicion about how pharma does engage and how proactive we can be. And then you have all the problems that you have around privacy, data privacy, the level of insight, different systems and healthcare systems where patient outcomes have very different social context as well. So the question is, there is a requirement now. If you look at PDUFA 6, if it gets through, if you look at PCORnet in the US, this whole network of patient outcomes where people can actually directly engage to develop patient outcomes. There are research networks that you can actually tap into. There are patient associations who really want to tap in and work with industry to represent their patients' needs to develop the medicines that really matter for them or the outcomes that really matter. So I think that every organization and every medical group should have a patient engagement team whose job it is to actually sit there and go, for a given disease, let's go and work with the patient groups, associations, PCOR networks, etc., to develop a strategy for that therapeutic space where patients are involved, to be able to give insights in a regular manner and build that into your programs, your trials, your communications along the way.
Two questions for you, Amit, based on what you've just said. Firstly, if you have a patient engagement team, is that not siloing the patient engagement function? Should it not be everybody's responsibility and an expected part? And then secondly, you said that this definition, this consensus is absolutely key. So why is there not, you guys are all at the senior level within your organization, but also you're at the senior level within the industry. Why is there not some kind of industry attempt to create some kind of treaty or some kind of definition that we see in a very public way, like we do with the Kyoto Treaty or other sort of important public standards, shall we say? Why is that not something that's on your agendas?
So I'll start with the latter. It should be on our agendas, and I'm more than happy, and I'm sure all of my colleagues, if they agree, we should set up a consortium. There are third parties now that host medical affairs forums or medical forums right now across industry for industry leaders to get together and actually raise this. And actually, as part of the inputs I'm sure we all had into PDUFA 6, we all actually started to talk about this. So there are kind of rules, regulations, frameworks being put into place by publication guidelines, by the FDA, by EMA around patient engagement. So it's just time that we can consolidate them. So I think we're not that far away to be able to do that. And I think I'm more than happy to join any of my peers to start that journey if we need to actually accelerate it further. But I think it's going to happen. To the question about the patient engagement group, the reason I say this is we have to be cautious that until organizations are familiar, have a process by which we can get patient insights in a diligent way, which is documentable, which is auditable. The reason I suggest a patient engagement group is only because they can advise as a center of excellence any team that wishes to reach out and do this. They're doing it sporadically on an individual level without a clear purpose, without insights, where I think is potentially risky unless we actually can do this in a professional manner. With social media, with everything else that people are watching, listening to, patient associations, patient groups. I think we have to be very cautious in making sure that we do this in the right framework. That's the only reason that I suggested a patient engagement team, not to restrict the patient engagement to just that group, but to actually ensure that there's a framework that everyone can use in a safe way.
Yeah, can I also add to that? So that's the principle that we're employing with our patient group, our patients in partnership group, is that it's not that group would do all of the work, but it could help enable each of the teams to do it for themselves so that they have the tools in their hands, they have the process in place, they understand what needs to be done, and they don't have to be experts themselves in the sort of the activity of patient engagement. We would have some things ready-made for them to tap into, because it's much too large a task for one central group to do. And I would agree that if it was only one group, then it would be very siloed, and it wouldn't be as effective as it could be. So I think that's an important principle. The other question about industry standards, I just wanted to also mention that FDA is very interested in having some way of quantifying and making more objective the patient input that we get. And you may be aware that they've had these patient-focused development seminars within the FDA on, they plan to do about 24 different diseases. And but they're still struggling on how to incorporate that early enough into their decision making, as well as to quantify across the industry. So there is a lot of energy around this. I've been involved with a few groups already who are trying to bring a more scientific approach to patient input. And I'm hoping that once we get a way forward, we'll be able to actually have more of an opportunity to have that consortium approach.
Okay, thank you. A comment from Michael Reed, one of our many comments that have come in the last few minutes. What got us here will not get us there. He uses capitals for that. In fact, medical affairs needs to metamorphise and not follow the typical function, which at the end of the day may be seen as just support for the business. We need to own the conversation internally within our organisations and also externally. Patient insight should be derived in both direct engagements, that's meetings with patient groups, and clinical exposure through clinical observership for medical affairs teams. That's a nice, eloquent comment, but actually I've probably got about 6 or 7 others that are saying similar things. And I think that there seems to be a call for medical affairs to take responsibility here, I feel. And I don't know if that's what you guys feel that needs to happen in your organization. I mean, I run plenty of other sessions for other parts of companies that also try to take responsibility for this type of thing. And I've run a similar poll as the last couple within the sort of commercial areas where the belief to focus on the patient is even higher than we saw here in this forum. So, you know, others feel that they're more advanced perhaps. Is it really our responsibility? And I'm going to come back to you, Nico, on that.
Thank you. I really like the quote that you got from one of the folks attending, so thank you for that. And I really think it's so true. We really need to transform the mindset of medical affairs dramatically, and I think everything said today shows that we're quite pushing for that. I think from my perspective, what really is a unique strength of medical affairs is that we are dealing with this with a required credibility with regards to the conflict of interest behind it. And in a super sensitive area like interaction with patients, I think Amit expressed this very clearly, we are well advised to ensure that when we are approaching this area, we're doing it in the most credible, most transparent, most reliable way, and also following a certain set of standards, which certainly will be for the benefit for the whole organization behind it and can be channeled into the respective stakeholder groups internally, no doubt about that. But I really think that that is where medical affairs is not only best placed to drive this and steer this, but is also really the part within the organization that has the best credentials and credibility to really do this in a meaningful way for everyone involved.
And just
okay,
just to
go for it, mate.
Just to kind of follow what Nico said as well, and to that quote. I mean, the question of commercial. So just in Sanofi, since I joined, we just moved the patient engagement team from a commercial organization to medical. And, you know, and part of this was to separate specifically the call to action of patient advocacy to try and garner support or knowledge from a patient group about a product or a disease area, which could be seen and is in many cases a way to try and increase the knowledge base in patients about a new therapy that's coming through, versus what we're trying to talk about here, which I believe we are anyway, which is to understand what is the issues that we're trying to solve for patients to improve their outcomes, to build into the programs, to build into the development, to build into the medical programs out and the services that we are designing or providing to improve outcomes. And that's where I believe that the medical group absolutely has to take the lead role. And I'm not suggesting that medical should be part of an advocacy group to try and garner support for getting physicians to prescribe a drug, which I think is a very different set of actions.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think. Okay, go ahead.
Go on, Kate. Go on, Kate. Go quickly.
Yeah, I just want, I'm on the same page with Nico and Amit in terms of the role that medical plays today. Before it was seen as a support function for commercial. I think today it is a much more scientific, much more patient-centric, much more, I think, the window of R&D outwardly to communicate credibly, and also the conduit of information and insights outwardly to inwardly into the company. And I think that function is absolutely needs to stand on its own within our companies and to have a voice of its own, as well as having a leadership role in the direction of our company. So I mean, it's just sort of an overall endorsement for a very strong medical organization.
Yeah, very well said.
That makes a difference. Yeah, guys, we've managed to get to just 8 minutes left, and believe it or not, we've barely mentioned the word MSL during this webinar so far, which is pretty impressive, I think, for a medical affairs session. So let's just, I think we're getting quite a lot of mileage out of the audience questions. Let me launch another. So have a look at your screens, everyone. Which one skill do MSLs need to improve most to adapt to the future? We've all talked about the future quite a lot in the last few minutes, but what do we actually need to do? Again, forcing you to choose only one. I am really quite unpleasant in that regard, aren't I? Let's have a look at the results in a few seconds. In-depth medical knowledge, being able to communicate and direct others, ability to build rapport with KOLs and stakeholders, understanding of the patient journey, or understanding of the healthcare system they operate in. What do we need for our MSLs? This is a list that I came up with. I've never managed an MSL in my life, so tell me if you think I'm missing something off that list, if you like. And I'll hold that open for just a few more seconds as we are running out of time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody. Right, let's have a look. Okay, again, a fairly broad distribution, but the winner is the understanding of the patient journey. So I don't know if that's just because we spent the last 15 minutes talking about patients, or whether that's the genuine, heartfelt response of our community, but it's certainly a key one there. So more important than expanding our medical knowledge by quite some way, and everything else as well. Surprised? Kate, what do you think?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I think if you look at it, in-depth medical knowledge and product information, that's an MSL's job. They should be doing that today. So if that were high, I'd be a little bit worried. But understanding the patient journey and also understanding the healthcare system within which patients are being treated, I think go hand in hand. Because you need to understand and be able to explain why the information that we have in our hands is applicable to the current medical system and the patient's involvement in that system. So this makes a lot of sense to me. But the other thing that I mentioned before is that, especially in our operating model, is that rapport with external experts and stakeholders and HCPs is also extremely important, and to have that credibility, to have those scientific conversations absolutely must improve and increase and be a part of how we do our day-to-day work.
This is Amit. If I had to choose one, I would have gone for the bottom one, which is understanding the healthcare system. I mean, I've become more and more obsessed about the fact that actually there are so many variants of the healthcare system, and the new role of the medical organization, in particular the MSL, is to really have a deep understanding of the healthcare system that they operate in, which is actually incorporates the patient journey, incorporates the patient pathway, treatment pathways, understanding the provider solutions they're trying to provide, but also understanding the outcomes for the patient in that given system and the payer's perspective on it, if that is appropriate. And because in the new world, the MSLs have to be able to communicate the value across the value chain. And in the new world, many companies are now doing this. They do patient support programs. They develop outcome-based programs. And the MSLs will be a vehicle to deliver those outcome-based programs. So, and they have to fit into a given system. So for me, I would have gone for the bottom one, which I think that's the direction that we're moving towards, which is much more a systems approach.
Okay, Nico, I'm sure you want to comment on this, but just before you do, I thought I'd highlight we've got some real polarity in our audience responses here. Hitendra Palmer, for example, saying, do not agree that it's the patient journey understanding. The MSL skill set is not required for this, in which case suggest MSLs should be nurses, medics, and pharmacists. In other words, I think that Hitendra is saying that's the role of the HCP, not the role of the MSL, where of course Deborah Chandler says that if you understand the patient journey better, then everything else will fall into place. So there's obviously about 15, 20 more responses one way or the other from our audience on different sides there. I think that well, Anna Martins puts it quite well. Concerning the MSL question, all of them are important, but ultimately the next MSL generation needs to be much more than medically excellent. They need to be diplomats, public relation experts, know the healthcare environment. That's how an MSL 2.0 must look. And you know what, I feel like I agree, but I feel like I could say that every role in pharma is similar to that. And we're just becoming more nebulous and fuzzy, and surely a high-performing organization needs to have well-defined roles for everybody, because everyone's trying to become an expert in everything, it feels right now. And you know, I have to say that the same conversation that we've had for much of today could have been pretty similar if we were talking about different departments. So whilst I don't disagree with what we're talking about, I find it difficult to know where the boundaries are. So, Nico, can you help me out?
Oh, I'd love to have the answer to that question. I think that this is one of the biggest challenges, that there is so much overlap in what we're doing, so many stakeholders that are approached from a whole variety of functions. I very much like the description of the MSL 2.0, because ideally we would love to see this. I think one of the answers is that we really need to ask ourselves who in the organization is best suited to deliver on what is the desired target, and then really take smart decisions based on a good cooperative model inside and outside the organization. Even though that's sometimes challenging, I think that really fostering close collaboration in that sense is absolutely key.
Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so a quick comment, if you can, from Amit and Kate before we have to wrap up. So I'm going to restrict you to 30 seconds each, if that's okay, guys.
Yeah, just to pick up that last theme, Paul, thank you. For me, it's not about mastery of every component of the healthcare system or all of those elements, but you know, the customer-facing organization in the future is going to be multidisciplinary. MSL needs to be there if it's a field-based interaction, and therefore they need to understand all components of that. Not master it, but understand it and bring the patient perspective to it.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing. It's not about being the keeper, the only one that understands that and having complete mastery over it. If you don't understand what the patient's going through or what the healthcare system requires, then you're not going to be able to communicate effectively and credibly about the information in your hands.
Thank you, Kate. Very nicely wrapped up. I think it's pretty clear that it's virtually impossible to do this topic justice in just 1 hour, and frankly we could talk for 2 days about it. So in actual fact, I think that's what we will do. We are putting on a couple of conferences over the next couple of months, both of them actually taking place in March and April. Have a look at your screen just there. If you found this conversation interesting, then obviously I am biased, but I think that it would be very smart for you guys to be at least one of these, depending on which is most convenient for you. If you've enjoyed listening to Kate, then she's going to be at the event in Philadelphia. Nico and Amit unfortunately have some calendar conflicts, but we do have, well, we will do our best to get them along to something soon, and we do have some similarly impressive speakers, so do please take a look at the brochures for those 2 events. Those dates are fast approaching. They both actually take place alongside our flagship commercial event, so although Medical Affairs is considered obviously as separate parts from commercial, we thought it would be very interesting to at least allow you guys to converse with the dark side and to see what those guys are up to as well. I'm pretty excited about these events. It's the first time that we have gone into the medical affairs area, but already we're getting a huge amount of traction, as once again evidenced by our 1,400 people signed up for this webinar. So do take a look at those. I want to say a huge thank you to Kate, Amit, and Nico, all of whom gave up their last hour, as well as some preparation beforehand to speak their minds today, and I think did so in a very honest and very clear way. And although this topic, of course, has years to run, I think that progress has been made, and that's being advanced by conversations like this very one. So as I say, do take a look. I'd like you all, just before you run away, to write one final comment into the Q&A box. Just let us know what you thought, what you think we should cover next, what topics you'd like to hear from, and also whether you have any other questions which perhaps I can throw at our panelists another day and get them to answer. Also, of course, if you've just got a nice thank you to make to anybody in particular. So I'll hear from you all as you leave, and thank you once again for joining us. I will hopefully see you in either Barcelona or Philadelphia in a couple of months' time, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.